Namaste, Jai Hind, and thank you for staying with us here at CNN News 18. Once again, to all our viewers, thank you for your patronage, thank you for your viewership, and thank you for taking the right stand when it comes to watching television debates, television broadcasting, news television here at CNN News 18. We're going to start with a story which is of huge significance, ladies and gentlemen. To try and fight this entire wave of Hindu hate or Hindu misya, Hindu groups across the world have slowly started standing up and voicing their protest and also putting the facts. It happened in Australia, it happened in the United States, and it also happened in the United Kingdom. After the Leicester violence, the biggest development that's happened is that the person who was appointed a professor at the Leicester University to try and get to the bottom of what happened and get part of this investigation team has been asked to step down. Not because Hindu groups took umbrage to this person, but also because general society in the United Kingdom, people from the conservatives, people from the other side, everybody, journalists, they said this man has already got a partisan view. He is not somebody who's authorized to sit there and decide on what happened or who's responsible for the Leicester violence. Of course, Hindu groups also took on certain media outlets for portraying a false picture or pushing a false narrative, which was again embedded in Hindu hate, or with a narrative which wanted to just put the Hindus in bad light. This person, Dr. Chris Allen, has written a column on a platform on the 28th of September where he wholly absolves one entire set, that is the Islamic community, the Muslims, of any wrong for what happened at Leicester. He has already formed an opinion where he believes a chant like Jai Shri Ram is a Hindu nationalist chant which incites Hindu nationalist violence. A chant of Jai Shri Ram, ladies and gentlemen. A chant which dates back to the age of Ram. A chant which is more than 7,500 years old here on Mahabharati, on this land. This person who calls himself a professor has written this, whereas he believes that those who did, and in one line absolves those who got on top of a Hindu temple and removed a Hindu flag. So a chant is more violent for this person than the act of getting on top of a temple wall or a temple premise and desecrating the temple and dropping and pulling down the flag. This man is supposed to go and conduct an impartial investigation. That's the question that was raised. That's the question that was raised, and that's the reason the collective pressure, and more importantly, the Hindu groups stepping up the protests against Hindu misya, standing up and taking the right stand for Hindutva and Hinduness or inclusion. That's the result that Chris Allen has had to step down. But this is also somewhere across the world echoing where people have decided enough is enough. It's time to take the right stand against Hindu misya. So let's get to the details. Dr. Chris Allen and his controversial views. This is what he had penned in that article, where he says wearing masks, hoodies, balaclavas, they chanted Jai Shri Ram, synonymous with Hindu nationalist violence. This is what he has penned, and he was supposed to conduct an impartial investigation. Necessary to examine the extent of Hindutva ideologies causing tensions outside India. What is a Hindutva ideology? Hindutva is Hinduness. So where is the ideology behind this? Is this a studied understanding of what is Hindutva, or a political narrative written or being extolled by a professor? These are questions that have been asked. Hindutva sentiment on rise in Britain since 2014. Hindus have lived in Britain even from before independence and, of course, soon after. Hindutva promotes hate for all non-Hindu religions and Muslims in particular. One would want to ask, what is the basis and what is the proof for a professor to write this? Can he back this with stated proof that Hinduness, which talks about Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vedanti, all road lead to just one particular truth, an inclusive thought process or philosophy. He has said that it has hatred for all other religions, non-Hindu religions. How is this person making a statement like this? And how is he sitting at the chair of an impartial investigation? These are questions that were raised, and that's the reason why he has stepped down, ladies and gentlemen. Standing up to Hindu hate, standing up to Hindu misya, the Leicester Ruckus. Let's get into this with our panelists today. Pandit Satish K. Sharma, Chair of the British Board of Dharmic Scholars, Pattai Suresh Krishnamurthy, Board Member of Kohana, Adit Kothari, activist and one of the protesters, one of the people who organized the protests against this biased reportage and perhaps a narrative stitching that was happening in the United Kingdom, with us. And Ratan Shardaji, RSS researcher and author, also with us. Namaste, Jai Hind, and let's say Jai Shri Ram. What others consider as Hindu nationalist violent chants is something which is eternal to our ethos as Indians, as citizens of this Bharat Bhumi, because we address everybody as Ram Ram and Jai Shri Ram. It's a greeting that says that we will belong to and we will follow the principles of Ram, who is also known as Maryada Purushottam. So that's what this chant actually means to people like Dr. Chris Allen. But Pandit Satish Sharma ji, let me say namaste and welcome to Mahabharati. I believe you are in Bharat.
I am blessed, I truly am. Dev Bhumi has welcomed me, it's been long overdue, and your welcome has made it even warmer than it was when I arrived. Thank you so much, it's a pleasure to be here. And Jai Shri Ram to you and to all of your viewers.
So let me ask you, Pandit Satish Sharma ji, who is this Dr. Chris Allen? What is it that he was trying to champion? And how did this entire effort to try and stand up to this agenda of Hindu hate, Hindu phobia, Hindu misya? I'd like to call it Hindu misya or Hindu hate, not Hindu phobia. They are not afraid of Hindus. They hate. It stems from hate or misya. But so let me ask you this, and please lay the context, and we'll take it across with our other panelists.
Jay. So Chris Allen is a newcomer onto the stage, into the drama that has been executed in Leicester for the last few months. Chris Allen is a long-standing criminologist. He's an academic. He's a very senior member of the Leicester University faculty. And that is the first, shall we say, the first casualty in this whole debacle. We can also refer to this now as the existence of a cabal. So if we try and understand what's happened, there is a view that has been put forward, and it has two planks. One is that Hindus were guilty, and it's because of some fanaticism that magically appeared in 2014. And two, that the other party, the Islamists, those feral youngsters who were attacking elderly Hindus in their mandirs, that they are not to blame. So these are the two planks of the narrative that is now being established, or they wanted to establish it. Fortunately, scrutiny revealed that both blanks are absolutely false, that they're a fabrication, that they are a propaganda exercise. And so when one turns to people of Dr. Chris Allen's ilk, it's quite remarkable. He published long before he was invited to lead this particular committee. He'd already published. He was on record as having announced what his judgment on the circumstances of Leicester was. You would expect members in public authorities to be able to go to Google and just do a quick check on the credentials and the orientation of the person to whom they were going to entrust probably one of the most critical, community cohesion sensitive issues that has arisen in the United Kingdom. The fact that nobody did it, the fact that they leapt to him straight away despite all of his relationships, combined with the fact that even Sir Peter Soulsby, the Lord Mayor of Leicester, announced his position and compromised the independence of the report. It all leads to one thing, and that thing is the presence of a cabal who have been enshrining institutionalized anti-Hinduism, anti-Misia in Leicester. And further scrutiny has now really begun to reveal the extent of this cabal. It has its tentacles in academia. It obviously has its tentacles in the local Labour Party. And you and I have spoken in the past about the Labour Party's issues to do with hate and contempt for Hindus. All of this is now, shall we say, the harsh glare of public scrutiny is now being directed at this. And we are seeing not only the collapse of the narrative, but we are also seeing the collapse of the credibility of many of the members of the institutions of Leicester, academics, but also politicians.
But Adit, one of the things, Aditji, is that Hindu groups have also started organizing themselves and they have started raising their voice. One of the aspects was that you were ready to even take on an institution like the BBC. There were organized protests and lobbies which were made and representations were made to fact check and perhaps correct certain perceptions. Now, how did this come about? Because this is a phenomenon which is recent, because largely many people have said that we are all fighting when we talk about Hindu groups and those who are trying to protest. There is no cohesion. Each group tends to fight, make noise on its own, and it's all splintered. But this was organized and this seemed to have a thought process coming through. What brought this about? And would you believe that the pressure that you exerted and various groups coming together exerted has resulted in certain people backing off?
Sure. I'd like to start with saying Jai Shri Ram, because apparently that seems to be like one of the crux of the issues that we've been fighting against, and precisely what the BBC has done as well. They've institutionalized this hate, like Panditji was saying before me. They've called Holi a filthy festival in one of their articles, which they had to detract later on. But it's surprising that, articles like that even went through the editorial checks and balances to make it into the print media to begin with. The protest that you spoke about, it took a lot of effort for us to galvanize that collective Indian and Hindu conscience. Getting people from various walks of life, various organizations to come and agree that, yes, this is a systematic problem within the British society, within the British media, where they are peddling a continuous anti-Hindu hate and rabid editorials against anti-India. Just to take you back, the issue is not something new. This was happening for generations. The BBC was in fact halted from producing editorials in India in 1965. In 71, in the late 80s and 90s, Mark Tully was essentially held up for having his views against the Kashmir terrorism, and he essentially said that he didn't buy the logic that Pakistan was remotely involved in any terrorist activities in India. And this is Mark Tully, who's a celebrated journalist from the BBC. So it's not something new, but from 2014, there's been a tectonic shift. The anti-India biases has changed to anti-Hindu bias. For some reason, they believe that the Narendra Modi and the BJP government that's come into power defies the colonial collegiate mindset that used to exist in India for so long. And that has sort of rattled a lot of feathers within institutions like the BBC and the Guardian. The protest was very dignified. It was extremely visual. People were very articulate with what the issues with the BBC was, and they were able to get their points across in a memorandum with complete list of references to all of the anti-Indian, anti-Hindu biases that the BBC have peddled for generations now. So hopefully the BBC will see the light and they will stop, at least if nothing, they can stop the journalists who have this anti-India biases within their hearts to stop peddling that narrative. So we will hope for that. But at least what this protest has done, it's galvanized more information about the BBC and the Guardian. It's spread awareness within the community in India and Britain that there is this concerted effort, overt and sometimes covert, to peddle this anti Indian and anti-Hindu narrative.
Now, this anti-India and anti-Hindu narrative, Patte Suresh Krishnamurthy, is present even in the US. So, if Sadhvi Ritumbra was not allowed to land in the UK, she was not allowed to even address a gathering which was planned, permitted for in Atlanta. But we also saw counters coming through. We saw Satya Dosapati and his entire group putting up hoardings. There was a big hoarding campaign which happened in New Jersey, where Hindu groups decided to stand up to this kind of Hindu messiah and this kind of bias. But this anti-Hindu bias or this anti-India bias, is it fueled by the rise of the BJP and Narendra Modi? Or is that how the narrative has been stitched? And so far there has not been an active counter to quell this propaganda or to challenge this propaganda. It's happening perhaps say 8 years later.
Well, yes. So first of all, Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.
Har Har Mahadeva.
Har Har
We
Mahadeva.
believe, and for us, of course, it's a way to reconnect back with our roots. There's no war chant here. There's no call for violence or anything like that. So yes, I'm very proud to be that. I'd go back to what Pandit Sharma has pointed out, which is academia in the United States is not lagging far behind. In fact, Rajiv Malhotraji's new book deals with this a lot, which is, it's talking about snakes in the Ganga. It focuses on Harvard. We have professors at
Dr. Vishwanathan, Vijaya Vishwanathan has also contributed to it, and she's also Atlanta-based, I believe.
That's right. Right. And we have professors from Rutgers who have tied up with what I would call the fundamentalist Muslim organizations, IAMC, for example. And to them, everything, absolutely everything, is Hindu nationalism. They have targeted Hindu Students' Council. They have targeted the Hindu American Foundation. They have targeted SEVA, which has done fantastic work during the COVID crisis in the United States. So to them, everything is Hindu nationalism, and Hindu nationalism by default somehow is violent and fascist. And this story has been going around with absolutely no evidence, as Pandit Sharma pointed out, absolutely no evidence of any violence anywhere. So we have, yes, you're right, we are starting a little bit late, but we are also being very effective. Apart from Satya Dosapati, Kona, for example, conducted a day at the Hill where we briefed several congressmen and congresswomen on this issue. They were very receptive to it. We have coordinated efforts going on throughout the country where we are bringing attention to this phenomenon of painting everybody on anybody who speaks anywhere positive about Hinduism, about our practices, as automatically somehow tainted by a philosophy that they define to be violent with no evidence. So they keep throwing this, it's a scholarly work. Well, how scholarly can it be when the people who are quote-unquote peer reviewing it are the exact same people who are peer reviewing everything you ever wrote? One of the peer reviewers, when one of the peer reviewers is your thesis advisor, just how peer reviewed are these scholarly works? So we are starting to push back very hard. Kona is becoming very successful in the United States, and I think it's just a matter of time before a target gets painted on our backs as well.
No, because Sureshji, one of the aspects, and I'm coming back to Dr. Chris Allen as I bring in Ratan Shardaji also, is that when he writes that Hindutva itself is non-inclusive and it hates every other religion outside of Hinduism, most of the modern day religions have happened after Sanatan Pratha and all the various offshoots, and Hindutva has existed thousands of years even before most of these modern day religions. So how is this peer reviewed and how is this academic or scholarly, because this is so ill-informed? But Ratan Shardaji, the narrative that's been stitched is RSS's Hindutva. RSS BJP driven Hindutva nationalism. How did this narrative develop and how has it gathered so much of root over the last 8 years that Hindu groups now have to organize across the world to fight this narrative?
Well, Madhav, first of all, Jai Shri Ram. Don't shout this slogan, not because I hate it, just because it's not, I don't want to be trying to show off. But since the atmosphere is such that I must show off. Second point is that you rightly pointed, Hindu Messiah, Hindu hate. It's not Hindu phobia. And this is not something new. This calling out, this something that happened from 2014 is very childish. Vendi Donega started this much earlier, if you remember. So this academic blackening of the Hindu and Hinduism and Hindu Dharma has been happening for a long time. We talked snakes in the Ganga, but Rajiv Malhotra is breaking India. The previous edition of this book came back more than 12 years back or 10 years back. So it was already happening. Unfortunately, our people didn't recognize. Indians by nature are docile, are disciplined, are abiding citizens of that particular country. Wherever they go, they want to be part of the society, so they will not do anything which shows them off as something separate, much different from the Islamic people. And if you talked about Jai Shri Ram being an offensive slogan for this Chris Allen, if he really studies Islamophobia, does he know the meaning of Allahu Akbar and Ya ilaha illallah? If he knew what is exclusive, he would understand what is exclusive. The issue is that this was deliberate. Now, why it is deliberate? One, because Hindu Dharma is the only Dharma which doesn't fit into Abrahamic worldview, doesn't fit into any Western worldview. It's an odd man out there. So they must somehow put it into some jacket where they can try to tame it. They tame the native cultures of America, then tame the native cultures of Africa either by killing them or converting them. They have not been successful in India. That is what pains them, not the Hindus. So this is the reason there is continuous struggle against them. And way back in around December 2019, I'm in USA. I told the people there, our Hindu brothers, they don't worry about what is happening in India. We are there, we will take care of India. You worry about how you are presented in your society, how your dharma is presented in your society, and counter it. So now you find that we are ready to counter it. Our people are ready to counter it. It's a welcome sign. And I am sure we have such wonderful ideas, such wonderful philosophies. If explained, they will go a long way in Hinduizing the entire society. And this is something new. Swastika was demonized. Swastika was made into a hate symbol. Hindus are being tried to be made into new Jews. And Hindus are successful. Hindus are doing very well. Hindus don't fight with anybody. But they are much bigger than Jews. They have a country of their own. Now this makes it very difficult for them to crush Hindu Dharma and Hindu people. That is what they're rallying as Islamists and their friends. And I think we also must thank people like Henry Jackson Society, which actually conducted a study there. It came out with a very clear fact that neither RSS is involved nor any other Hindu organization is involved in any kind of violence. As far as hate against RSS is concerned, it is because it is the only organization which has stood for, since its independence before that, for the rights of the Hindus, for the high qualities of Hindu, because Hindus had been already shown as outdated, outcast, orthodox, useless people, casteist people. Right. None of its high qualities are ever even discussed. That is how Hinduism is taught. So once RSS is there and it's inspired people out there in UK, USA, etc., they find it difficult to tame this society, and that is the reason this is happening. But and we don't want to be tamed. We don't want to be museum pieces. We don't want to be red Indians. We want to be alive. So a civilization which we have been for last 10,000 years, and we will keep alive and keep on fighting good intention. Not with any
you would also want to see that it was an extension of a narrative that was spread even within Bharat over the last 70-75 years, even post-independence, which continued to perhaps. And also the other fact is that there were others who got organized far more, and they realized that you have to kill the thought, kill the narrative. And you have to build a narrative against this community, which so far is docile, so far is non-challenging, is contributing to the economy, and it is also paying out huge amounts of donations to local politicians without expecting anything back in return from them. Tomorrow, now you make every pound and an exchange for every pound, Pandit Satish Sharma there. If you want my vote, you then give me my rights. But the challenge there, Panditji, is that you are again now we are going to get caught in this argument. Even as somebody like Dr. Chris Allen, how did he get sucked up into it? He's an intelligent person, he's a senior person, he's somebody who's a professor at Leicester University. How did he get caught in this narrative? Because his 2001 article also, he's drawing parallels to far-right white supremacists with Hindu nationalists or Hindutvawadis. Now, this is something, how did he make this parallel with his intelligence? How did he draw this conclusion? Because again, what he's done is he's very smartly portrayed the Islamists or the Muslim groups as victims, and the perpetrators or the offenders, in that case in 2001, post 9/11, were the far-right groups. Now it is the Hindus. So how is this? This is again very similar to the Afro-Dalit concept, and if what is happening there Brahmins are equal to whites and Dalits are equal to blacks in the US. See, do you see these parallels which are developing, Panditji?
Gee, they are too difficult to avoid. They're self-evident. When a reasonable person tries to piece together pieces of a jigsaw puzzle and then a picture is presented, you have to accept the picture that's presented no matter how uncomfortable it is. And the picture that's being presented to us is the existence of Islamist and extreme leftist cabals masquerading as academics, masquerading as politicians, to the detriment of the British people, including and specifically in this instance the British Hindu people. This is established. We have no reason or need to interrogate it further. The Henry Jackson report adds weight to this. But you see, the larger picture, though, which we have to then ask a question about is, who is on trial here? Who is on trial is actually the British establishment. It's not just a bunch of rogue academics. The very fact that Dr. Allen could rise to the heights that he's risen to in academia without anybody questioning the veracity and the basis of evidence and fact, especially in the Department of Criminology, which rests on the presence of evidence and facts, you know, that's indicative of a cabal, of a conspiracy, even if I can use that very unpopular word. But I remember Subhash Chandra Bose once said, he said, the British have elevated sanctimony to the level of being a weapon of state. Now, I think this is really what we are seeing. We are seeing the BBC using that moral high ground to denigrate and to be finger-wagging at British Hindus and Hindus generally. We're seeing Leicester University doing exactly the same thing. We're seeing Peter Soulsby doing exactly the same thing. But what has happened, and this was beyond their expectation because they were totally obviously unprepared for it, is that the Hindu community here in the United Kingdom turned the magnifying glass upon them, and what we found has been revealed to all and sundry. The Hindu community in Bharat added amplification to the discoveries, added the weight of numbers, and also passion to everything that we were doing. It was wonderful to see hundreds of thousands of people in Bharat tweeting, supporting, portals, news broadcasts. That was totally unexpected. And what it's done now is it's put the British establishment with its colonialist elements in the dock. They are in the dock of public opinion, and they're in the dock of interrogation and scrutiny. And I think they're going to be found wanting. The British have these lovely Nolan principles which Peter Soulsby and Dr. Allen are required to follow. And if I share with you the principles, you will laugh when you try and match them with their actions. The first is selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, leadership. You know, it's all wonderful. Isn't it wonderful? And these are requirements for people in public office. And yet none of those 7 principles has been adhered to by any of this group, this cabal within Leicester. And unless there is a price, unless they are brought to task, I can't see that confidence in the establishment can be restored. This is what's really on trial. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the jury comes back with.
Well, Ratan Sharda ji has a Britain Connect. He's just telling me, why don't you tell our viewers, Ratan ji, what you've just sent me here on as a personal message, rather than me reading it out. You should say it. You should share it. You have a connection with Leicester, don't you? Family connection.
Actually, my eldest brother was a student there for MPhil in Leeds University, and he started the Vivekanand chair there, and he was instrumental in the first Hindu temple being constructed in Leicester, sorry. So that's the connection. My 2 cousins lived there, and they were the ones who started Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh work there along with some seniors. So I have a lot of friends there. That's why I know the condition of Hindus there. And when you're talking about, you know, why they say it, as I talked about the Abrahamic versus a non-Abrahamic faith, you will find the strange connection of left Islamic forces, where Islamists and left are working together in the name of liberalism, while Islam has no place for liberalism, and liberals have become totally illiberal. Where there is communism, there is no Islam. Where there is Islam, there is no communism. Despite that, in a way that they want to somehow subdue Hindus for no reason that I can understand, except that they find them a strange kind of people whom they cannot, digest or finish their cultural strength. This is the reason all this is happening, but ultimately they will come to grief, because if we have to save the world, we only can do through inclusive philosophy, which is Hindu philosophy, and that is the way forward.
No, but the other aspect is, if I can bring in Aditji here, this Hindu messiah has been there for a while. There is a pattern, and that's exactly what I want to also look at in detail. Now, there were attacks on Hindus at Leicester. There was a temple vandalized in Smithwick. You had campaigns of Hindu candidates at US elections derailed. There were Oxford students, Rashmi Samant, termed the Hindutva agent. Rajiv Malhotra ji was not allowed to speak. The other aspects. Then you also had Vivek Agnihotri being harangued and not being allowed place to go ahead and speak when he was already scheduled to do that with Kashmir files. Rashmi Samant forced to quit as elected student president elect at Oxford. Prejudice against Rajiv Malhotra, like I said. Acts of vandalism and bias in Australia. Unfounded bias against Hindu traditions among Western intellectuals, like they mentioned swastika. So this has been happening for a while. How did the intelligentsia or the academia get crowded by this group? Is it also somewhere fault within the Hindu groups or the Hindu communities in America, Australia, and also in the UK that they were perhaps splintered? They were more concentrated on contributing to the economy, living their lives, being there, Aditji, and not realizing that their successive generations will now face it when they get into colleges. That's what's happening now, right? First generation Hindus who are there in the UK, US, Australia are now seeing third generation face the consequences.
Absolutely, Anand. I mean, if you look at the left intelligentsia and the academia that has hijacked the space in universities, you will be absolutely appalled with the kind of academic research work that they're carrying out. To name a few, there's Dr. Natasha Cole, there's Amrit Wilson, and the professor who went after Rashmi Ji, all of them. And the problem is that we haven't taken cognizance of it.
Right.
From an institutional perspective, we haven't said that we will not send our children to these universities until the social sciences divisions of within these universities take cognizance of this rabid anti-India and anti-Hindu academic work that is essentially being peddled around. So the next step that we want to take from here is we want to counter these universities. We want to tell them that we will spread information about the kind of rabid research work that you're doing within India, so that the students, the aspirational students who are investing monies into your universities can be aware of your nefarious designs. Because at this point, we are all just sleeping. We just don't know within our community circles, we just don't have that kind of information as to why this is happening or how long this has been happening for. So I think that awareness coming out from our community will be a massive help to sort of create that sort of balance and that equilibrium.
Right.
When it comes to the question of Hindu intelligentsia, I think we've taken the spirit of freedom of speech way too far. I mean, if you look at it historically, blasphemy law, for example, that is seriously a result of us giving away our space for freedom of speech.
Correct.
So, historically, we've been very weak in carving out our arguments.
They're not just weak in carving out, we've been weak in fighting for these arguments and, voicing them vociferously at the right platforms and perhaps creating the right lobbies at the right places. And that's why we find our temples in our own country controlled by governments, whereas all other religious institutions are being free to run their own affairs. So that's the level to which we have allowed ourselves to be dictated and doctored, however you'd want to use the phrase. I have limited
and using the funds
using the funds. Obviously, all of that included. And now we are at a stage where we don't know whether we can run our temples if the governments walk away. We've been conditioned to think that our temples are supposed to be run by governments. That's how we've been conditioned. Just like we've been conditioned to say that, okay, whatever the academia at these universities and at these places, they turn around and say that is gospel or that is true. And what is actually the truth should not be considered at all. We've been conditioned that way. I have limited time, actually run over time, but quick comments from Patel Suresh Krishnamurthy and also Pandit Satish Sharma. Satish ji raised his hand, so Suresh ji, I'll just go to him and then I'll come back to you to close the debate.
Sure.
Yes, Satish ji.
Gee, thank you. I just wanted to give a shout out to the previous generations, because I don't think many people realize what a hardship and how terribly difficult it was for old generations. The first generation in the United Kingdom suffered hate and physical violence. I can remember the attacks that used to be inflicted upon them. And what they did is they established a base. Now what's happened is we have a generation who can establish a base in language. And now that they're establishing it, we are going to achieve one thing. And I'll share with you what that one thing is. We have been civilizationally gaslit. Gaslighting has occurred at every level, in politics, in religion, and everywhere else. And what's happening now is that gaslighting is being rejected. And those who have established power and wealth as a result of gaslighting Bharat, they are feeling very, very vulnerable. And they should feel vulnerable, because justice is a fundamental part of this Brahmand, and justice will not allow karma to forgive people who have been so terribly violent.
One thunderstorm can actually extinguish this entire gaslight. So that's also possible. But yes, Sureshji.
Yeah, so the one thing I wanted to point out is, the situation on the ground in the United States is a little bit different. We have very strong protections for freedom of speech. We have extremely strong protections, First Amendment protection for the people. And I am very much optimistic that at the very core, the American people are fundamentally fair. They recognize when there is discrimination. They recognize when there is unfairness. And it is shame on us as a Hindu community to not have taken advantage of that infrastructure to make our own case. That is something we are changing. At Kona, we are fundamentally made a decision to play within the rules, to continue to take advantage of the protections that this great country offers us. And we are being successful. There's no question that our outreach to lawmakers, our outreach to other organizations, and presenting a unified front from within the confines of the US Constitution is really showing the American people, and I dare say the political parties in the United States, just how badly the Hindu Americans are being gaslit. So I am very optimistic that we can continue to fight this fight if we make the case on its merits, if we continue to make the argument that, don't just reflexively declare Hindu nationalism to be fascist. It's not anything like that. There aren't lines of people waiting in the United States to kill hundreds of millions of Muslims. That is just fundamentally wrong. So we are choosing to play within the confines, within the protections of the Constitution, and we are very confident we'll succeed.
And see, second largest population of Muslims on any landmass in any country exists in Bharat. So if the intention was to extinguish Muslims, that would not have happened. That would have first happened in Mahabharati, and that is not there. So this is the biggest example. So what we need to do is that we need to get the Gyan Chakshus of a lot of people open now. But wonderful conversation, gentlemen. Thank you very, very much for adding perspective, weight, and also lending your voices on this platform and taking the right stand for the right cause. Namaste and Jai Shri Ram. Thank you very, very much.
Jai Shri Ram. Jai Shri Ram.
Namah Parvati Pataye Har Har Mahadeva.
Har Har Mahadev. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to take a very short break, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, it's the common code call that now echoes, it resounds in the courtrooms from Karnataka into Kerala. Stay with us.